Industry Insider coming to you from the NGV, the National Gallery of Victoria here in Melbourne. Joining me, Paul Curtis. How are you, my friend?
Oh, good. Thanks for interviewing me.
Thanks for having us down. We finally got there. It's been about a month in the transition of getting this interview on camera.
Month? Seems longer.
Maybe.
Actually.
Yeah. Well, it could be longer. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, maybe 5 or 6 weeks. Doesn't matter.
Anyway,
Whatever.
Anyway, it's all good. We finally got here. Now, you're here. The reason why you're here is you're co-producing. Is it a night in Monet's Garden?
Oh no, I'm not co-producing. The directors here, I've worked with before when they were at the Brisbane Gallery, and just through the process of them doing this series there called Up Lates for the last 5 years, it then led to me kind of talking to them, or them talking to me about being involved in a similar kind of series they were mounting with the NGV Friday nights at Monet, as this one is on Monet's Garden. And I was just approached to put a series of artists together.
And what was your process of picking them? Were you picking them relevant to the sort of venue, or just who you were liking at the moment? Or?
There's a whole collection of factors involved. I mean, and it's not just something where I get a carte blanche call on kind of what's involved, but just from working with these guys over the years, it's a case of discussing the exhibition, the themes that kind of float around that, and then what they're wanting to achieve, what is essentially out there, what I know of, what my taste leans towards, that I come back to them with a whole collection of things. And in this case, they were pretty happy with everything that I put forward, and then it was a case of just trying to fit it all into the dates and budget that was available, and then have someone sign off with it at the end,
Well, your past leans obviously heavily towards everything you've just mentioned. Can you tell us a little bit more about you're 25 years in the industry, and you've obviously done a lot of stuff. And so can you take us back to the start briefly and sort of bring us through to where you are now as to what you've done?
First of all, I've always found that I don't have a specific type of music that I like. I like all kinds of music. I have over the years built up a very large record collection of all kinds of music. Jazz. I know. I just went to Argentina and came back with a whole bunch of Argentine kind of tango-esque type stuff.
Yeah, right.
And actually, I was really stunned to find out when I was there that there isn't really a live scene of tango music. There's the tango dance, which is what it's more about, and the social kind of world that revolves around the whole dance culture. Yeah. But there isn't like a tango music scene as much, even though there's some amazing tango musicians come out. The tango music itself flourished more over in France and Spain than it did in Argentina. That's not to say that there isn't that they don't have a history of it. It's just it's all about the dance. So I was really stunned. But anyway, we found this amazing collection of music, and I mean, obviously the Astor Piazzolla stuff, but also I think his son or nephew has a jazz band that we brought a few albums of that are awesome. Anyway, off the track. So I've always had a really wide taste of music, and so when I started, it was just to do stuff, and mainly I was doing stuff from an art perspective, so a visual art perspective, so posters, flyers, T-shirts. I taught myself screen printing, just get involved. I refused to take money for it because I thought it would corrupt the art. It was quite a naive kind of position to take, because there was also the fact that somehow or another I had to live. Generally requires money.
Yeah, you got to eat.
Yeah, but at the same time, I was actually strangely working in quite an opposite world. I was working for one of Rupert Murdoch's newspapers, but not in the actual content side of things, more in the publishing side of things. During that time, I was teaching myself screen printing and doing all kinds of things, which slowly led to a point where one day I found that I was in a position to generate income from just creating flyers and posters and stuff, and had finally gotten past this kind of whole idea that I shouldn't get paid for it. So it just kind of led me into it.
That's really interesting, because I know a lot of people out there that are photographers or do interviews, or do various things for bands or whatever it may be, festivals. They get to a point where they're well known for what they're doing, but they're not really converting that into money. What changed that for you, and how did you sort of change that?
Purely luck.
Yeah.
Opportunity, moment, place. A certain person running a club. Yeah, I mean, it's just...
Just keep going. Really.
I mean, I always seem to have been very fortunate with little things popping up. I mean, maybe it's a case that I could see them as well. I don't know. I wouldn't refer to myself as overly ambitious or driven in a business kind of sense in any regard. Mm-hmm. You know.
Well, so let's talk a little bit more about what you've got. Consume and Valve. So Valve is a record label. And Consume is...
No, I mean they're just names.
They're just names. Explain them to me. This is
well, Consume kind of grew out of Regurgitator because it's a play on the whole throwing stuff up, and also it means a lot to me because it was a contradictory kind of play on the idea of music and stuff, just a product, you know. So consuming, and I don't know, it's very simple. A lot of what motivates me is this kind of whole anti kind of commerce thing, this kind of struggle and conflict that I have. And I was thinking about when I was driving here today that I feel like I'm in a really conflicted state all the time with this idea that all I essentially do is management administration, which generally acts of business administration, but the whole thing that's underlying it all is this kind of idea that I feel that culture is always in a state of conflict with business. You know, that business has a certain agenda and a certain set of outcomes that it needs to achieve, which is generally around the idea of money, selling things, and culture is something that's kind of more deeply kind of motivated, like it's about expression and creativity, and actually if you want to kind of look at where music come from, it was all about ritual and communication, you know, it's about human expression, and that it somehow or another then falls into this relationship with business where, yes, artists do need to make money to live from, but there's this other process that happens outside of them where it kind of almost compresses it all into these kind of easily digestible kind of scenarios, you know, just purely for the outcome of selling more and make more money. And so I've always been conflicted with all this kind of stuff. I know I can't help but think about it. I don't think I could do anything with outside of what I do, because I don't think I could sell anything on a commercial level. Yeah. I don't even know if I'm capable of it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess one of the things I personally think about when I'm looking at your career is, I mean, Regurgitator is one of those things where, like you said before, it's a grassroots level thing. It's never been anything past doing it for the love, I guess, and just doing it to put stuff out there. From what I see, anyway. I mean, you could.
Yeah, it's certainly doing it for the love, but at the same time, like, there's this awareness that. You know, they have to live from this as well. So, like I said, it's this kind of weird mixture of things. Certainly that's there, but, you know, I think we've just been lucky, and in the sense that there hasn't been overt compromises made to get from A to B just to generate revenue, you know what I'm saying? And it's funny, like, just going back to your question before about Valve and Consume, I mean, I don't really think of Valve as a record label. Yeah. I've always viewed it as just a conduit to kind of put stuff out. Is what I called it. That's the whole idea of valve to me is this valve, and so I related the word valve to inside your heart. There are valves, you know, and it's all about just that simple connection with like stuff moving through things and just passion, I suppose. It's funny. I feel embarrassed when it's referred to as a label, but then at the same time, I've set it up as a company as well. So I mean, you know, it's a complete kind of contradiction in many ways. Yeah. But this is the truth of it, though, right? You can't do this stuff unless you kind of participate in that. So you probably got me in a very kind of confused state today, actually. Yeah.
It's good though. It's good.
Yeah,
And the other thing is as well, we do want to come down and talk to you about that stuff because it's all very interesting what you do, and you know everything's obviously clearly very well thought out to your own degree. Well,
no, I disagree with it actually.
You really?
Yeah, I don't think it's thought out at all. I think it's just, I mean, certainly there's planning and stuff, but the planning is very spontaneous and very like just, it's like you see things and you just kind of follow them and you make decisions as you move, you know. You can't control anything. You can't control how people respond to things. You can't control what people choose to do with things, you know. There was a period there where, I mean, I've always said, if Regurgitator ends, then maybe I'll just stop doing all of this, you know. And there was a point there where I thought it was going to end, and you know, I've always said to them, during this point where I thought it was ending, I said to them, never kind of break up, because you may always come back to it, even if it's in the future with somebody else or whatever, you know. Just let it exist in a grey zone. But there was a point there where I went, you know, maybe I can't do this anymore. I don't feel that kind of thing that I used to feel for it. And anyway, I saw a band that kind of stirred me in the same manner called I Heart a Roshammer, and I started working with them, and I threw myself into it, because I tend to invest time, energy, money into this, and we did 2 records, and I really thought they had something kind of amazing going on, but I did say to them from the very first time we met, look, what you're doing is kind of dark and idiosyncratic, and it stands out on its own, and if this is going to work, it's going to take like 5 or 6 albums, and sure, that's an easy thing for me to say, but it's a really difficult thing to probably deal with, or even to kind of acknowledge, especially when someone is saying to you when you're young, I suppose. And actually, in hindsight, I don't think they really heard me. But anyway, there was a point where we'd done 2 records, and then one of the members said, I'm bored now, nothing's happening, I'm going overseas. And I was like, what? We just recorded a record and put it out, we got all this stuff happening, and of course, she's like, well, you can't control me. And I'm like, well, no, I'm not saying I want to control you, but I'm asking for you to kind of comprehend what we've been doing for the last 5 years. Yeah. Like, yes, of course I can't control you. But like, sure, she took off, and all these opportunities arose. She's gone, end of story, and they've done a few things since, but it really left me going, yeah, right. You can't actually control people like this. You've got to just kind of go with it. You can't control any of it. You can't control how an audience responds to something. Mm-hmm. So my planning? No, my planning is based on instinctual response, spontaneous kind of thoughts, ideas that kind of, you know, take you off in different kind of routes, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah. Can we have a brief chat about the new Regurgitator record?
Yeah, sure.
Released today?
Yeah, today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had the Deezer pre-release, right, on the 23rd?
Yeah. Deezer did this. I mean, they actually approached this with this idea, which at first I was like, I wonder what kind of impact this will have on other things, within itself. But after a while, it kind of made sense, and of course, it was a different way to approach things. And just the idea, I mean, I'm not against the whole streaming kind of service stuff where there's been criticism that, there's no money in it. I mean, to me, I don't see it any different to radio. Radio doesn't pay you either. Mm-hmm. I mean, essentially, there's a collection society that generates revenue from it, and then is kind of split up in this kind of relatively kind of abstract manner. This is paid on a per stream basis and probably works out to be roughly similar money, I would assume. I haven't really looked into it with any kind of depth, but at the same time, it's like, this is a different kind of medium mechanism, let's just go with it. Mm. And yeah, it was really fascinating to watch it actually, because I was checking all the analytics side of it, where you can see how it's being played or when it's being played in different countries that they have access to, and the percentage breakdown, and you get all these kind of crazy demographics, which I've never really been overly interested in. Like, I've never been interested in charts and any of that kind of crap. just like records sell or records don't, you know, and sure, it probably should be something I am interested in, being a manager, but I never have been. But this was like really interesting to observe. And I found it even laughable because pretty well the moment it was put up and made live in Australia, it went to #1 album and #1 artist. And then you'd see pretty well the whole time it was like #1 Regurgitator, #2 Eminem, 3 or 4 or 5 or something was like Pink and Katy Perry. It was a real weird mixture, and I was like, I kept taking screenshots and sending them to the guys, going, "This is like really weird," you know, that it's veering in this way. But it was mainly probably because there was a bunch of Australian Regurgitator fans who had this opportunity to just play this kind of music whenever they wanted, because, you know, essentially it's just a user formatted radio where you just set up what you want. And so, I mean, I think there was probably a bunch of people just listening to it over and over, you know. But it was a really different way to approach it, and kind of interesting, actually. And I'm sure there'll be others that do this as well. I mean, I'm not sure we were the first to do it, but it was...
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah.
So today's the official record release?
Yeah, essentially.
Well, how do you guys feel on a day of release? I'd be interested to know how you feel coming from your point of view with the music business.
I don't know. It's kind of like a really abstract thing, actually. I've never been like it's just a date. I mean, what do you do? You can do stuff, but essentially it's kind of on its own. I mean, what did I do today? Well, I had to fly to Melbourne, so that was kind of a convoluted thing. So what I did is this morning at the airport, I put a post up saying that you could get the album from Bandcamp now for whatever you want to pay. So we have this Bandcamp set up where that we started using, where we put up full res WAV files and people can download them for whatever they want to pay, be it an email address through to whatever. So I kind of opened that up to the public and landed in Melbourne and went to the frequent flyer lounge to use the internet. And so already there's a whole bunch of people probably getting it for free, but a bunch of them buying it as well for anything from 99 cents to $20. Yes, I think it's fascinating to watch that whole first-hand kind of thing where you're not so segregated. I mean, it's great that maybe retail outlets and so forth or whatever sell it, but you're kind of completely kind of alienated in a sense from it, you know, where some of these kind of new digital access things, you can literally communicate directly with the audience, so to speak, and get these human responses. I mean, it's a totally different thing. So yeah, that was fascinating. And then I also had been this tour has been a really weird kind of one where normally when a tour comes together, there's a bunch of really great ideas for like a whole package, you know, like 2 or 3 bands or whatever to join up. And for this one, I just couldn't find anything right. And it's got to be something right. And it was a real struggle, but eventually we ended up being offered this band from Portland called Vampire, who seemed kind of suitably cheesy and perfect for this. So this morning, it took me till then to get a press release, because I wrote all the press releases. And I sent that press release out this morning everywhere, just announcing all the supports and guests for this tour. So yeah, I mean, that's what it's been like. Other than that, it feels kind of weirdly detached. I don't know. Does that mean I'm not participating in it correctly? I don't know. This record's also been fraught with just a weird series of hurdles. The cover was printed incorrectly. During the week, we've been organising our own vinyl pressing. The vinyl cover a courier lost the vinyl cover. And then when it finally turned up, it was like last night, which is pretty well too late to get it out for the release date. And then they call me and tell me that it's been printed on the wrong stock. And it's just kind of almost farcical, like, it just feels like, funnily enough, the first single's called Mountains. It just feels like there's been a huge mountain put in front of me to get this record out. I feel kind of weird about it, actually. That said, I really like it as a record. I think it's one of the freer things they've done since Unit. I always felt that after Unit, and because of its success, it kind of left this kind of haze of industry floating around that I think is that whole thing, comes back to the whole thing of like the conflict between commerce and art, where, you know, certain things happen where it then kind of impacts on the creative thinking, even if you're not aware, even if it's not overtly conscious, it's still kind of there, this kind of expectation and awareness of what the outcome has to be. And I think that whether they're aware of it or not, and I think they were to some degree here and there from just the discussions we've had, is that I think it's taken until this record for them to kind of really truly escape that kind of baggage that's been with them.
Yeah.
I felt they started to release it on the last one, but this one I feel like they've really kind of let it go. Feels like they're freest since then. But yeah, I really liked it, and I hadn't heard anything until it was ready to be mastered. I heard one track that I kind of wrote to Quan and said I didn't really think was that strong, which somehow other translated to Ben as I hated his track.
Yeah, right.
But like, I've never really been involved in their recording process. I don't really like to.
Yeah.
I like to kind of stay outside of it. I feel like I'm too intrusive and I shouldn't be there anyway, so I've never really been there. I've always just heard it either in patches or all of it at the end.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, maybe the different one was the Bubble, where we recorded in the glass kind of thing.
Yeah, the band in the Bubble here over at Federation Square.
Yeah, I mean, I was around for all of that. But that record was really interesting because one of the things I've always really admired about Regurgitator, and we've always kind of, I suppose, fought for in the early days when we were with Warner and Michael and so forth, is like, there were never any demos, there was never any intrusion into the creative process. We'd get half the money, we'd give them we'd get the rest when we finished to pay for everything. They would generally kind of write the record as they were recording it. So it really was like just naturally being captured as it unfolded, rather than this kind of overly pre-planned, maybe even controlled, where, you know, obviously entities who invest money in these things kind of want to make sure what they're getting is going to achieve what they're after, which is from the minimum their money back to making a profit. Obviously that's what they're there for, you know. We always seem to sit outside of that and just go through it.